Timothy Ballard is founder and CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, or OUR. He also serves as OUR's Jump Team Commander for rescue operations. Grateful to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks.
I'm going to go ahead and play this short intro.
Last weekend, police broke up a major sex trafficking ring in Colombia, which has become a destination for tourists looking for sex with boys and girls. The police had help from an American who went undercover to rescue the children, and Elaine Quijano met him.
Tim Ballard has one mission: to track down child traffickers. 4 months ago, Colombian authorities asked him to investigate a tip that children were being sold there as sex slaves.
Within a half hour, this individual walks up to me, starts asking me what I'm here for, what I want, and within minutes, he says, well, I've got kids as young as 11 years old.
Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent, now heads up Operation Underground Railroad, a nonprofit group that rescues trafficked kids. After that first meeting, the Colombians asked him to put together a sting.
No men will be in here, only women.
Operation Underground Railroad spent months planning, renting this house, rigging it with hidden cameras to document the crime, coordinating with Colombian authorities, and negotiating with the traffickers.
How they find these kids is they lure them in by pretending to have a modeling agency. They target them at 9 or 10 years old. And they were telling us that about by 11, they're ready for sex. They're ready to be sold.
What is that like, looking into that kind of person's eyes?
It's horrifying, and this is why. Because I've got a smile in the face of evil. This is the table where we're going to do the negotiation.
Less than 24 hours after the operatives landed, the suspected traffickers arrived on the island, and the final deal with the undercover team began. 54 boys and girls aged 11 to 18 were ushered in for what had been billed as a sex party. They were given candy and drinks and told to wait in this small room.
This little 11-year-old boy, I remember, he asked one of my operatives if they could give him some cocaine or something. He said, they usually give me something because I'm really scared.
By the time the deal was done, the alleged traffickers were set to make $25,000. That transaction was never completed. 25 Colombian special operatives stormed the party, arresting 5 suspects, 4 men and 1 former beauty queen, all charged with child trafficking. The victims, 29 of whom are under 18, were evacuated, given medical exams, and placed in a rehabilitation center where specialists are working to undo the damage.
Right before I got in the boat, we had to walk by this room where the kids were, and they put their hand up. And I touched their hand and see that there's liberation now.
Liberating one child at a time. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, New York.
One of the first things I wanted to ask you was, I think a lot of people here, including myself, we hear child slavery, child trafficking, and it's maybe new to us, maybe new to some people listening in. Can you give us a sense of just how big this epidemic is around the world and what you've seen?
Yeah, it's shocking how big it is. If I wasn't in this, I wouldn't believe it. But the numbers are staggering. I mean, there are more people, if you look at men, women, and children, there's more people in slavery today than ever before in the history of the world. And it's interesting because we kind of congratulate ourselves, I think, as a people that we have eradicated slavery, and that was all back in the old days. There's more people enslaved today than you can add up all the people that were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade, for example. And in no way am I belittling that. I mean, that was horrific and just terrible. There's more living today than all of those over 300 years. And millions of them are children. By most estimations, over 5 million children are forced into sex slavery or slave labor. And roughly 2 million are children forced into sex slavery. So these numbers are astronomical. How can this possibly be? until you go in, and I've been in there, and I see this is real. Mm-hmm. These children you just saw on the clip. I mean, that's one of countless operations we've done. This is real. Kids are being sold as sex slaves, as slave labor. It's to me, it's the most horrific plague ever to hit the earth, and especially in our time. And part of what we're trying to do is let people know, because most people don't know. It's in this dark corners of the world. People don't see it, and so they don't know what's happening. It'll never be eliminated until everybody knows and stands up.
Yeah, and so related to that, I mean, you had to go through your journey of discovering what this was. Can you kind of take us through, in the CBS introduction, it kind of mentioned your initial background in the CIA and Homeland Security. Can you walk us through the creation of OUR and how you came about? Yeah,
it was, I didn't go into this thing with my sword unsheathed and courageously. I was scared to death of this topic. I didn't want to see it any more than anyone wants to see it. But I was asked to do it, and I did, and then I saw, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I applaud the U.S. government's efforts leading the way, I believe, in this fight, especially Homeland Security investigations, the group I worked with. And just great programs they're pushing out. The reason I created Operation Underground Railroad was really a couple of cases. One in particular had to do with a little boy who I learned about in Haiti, who had been kidnapped and trafficked. And I learned about this case, and I was kind of just obsessing over it. Like, who's looking for this little boy? It was this one little child. I had a picture of him on my desk. I learned about it. I read it. There was an article in the paper that I had found about this case. And I got to the point where it wasn't a U.S. case. The crime happened in Haiti, and so there was no mandate, there was no budget for the U.S. government to get involved in this situation. And I met the father. His name is Gesno. I actually had some friends fly him up to where I was so we could sit down and go through the whole case and find out if there's something we could do. And one of the very first things he said to me, super humble, amazing man, he said, "Do you have children?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, Can you imagine going to bed knowing that one of your children's bed was empty, your child was not there, and you didn't know where they were? Could you go to sleep? And I said, "There's no way I could go to sleep." And he says, "I haven't slept for years." And he went on to tell me that his investigative technique was, he was on his own. I mean, he's in one of the poorest nations on the planet. Very little resources to be doing any kind of proactive investigations into missing children or kids who have been trafficked. And he knew his child had been. So he just arbitrarily would pick a neighborhood in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and just walk and hope he would hear his child cry. And that's what he was doing. And I was in tears. He was in tears. I said, "Gesno, there's better ways to do this." He's like, "Well, show me. I don't know what to do. All I know is I have to do something." And then I recognized, then I promised him, I said, I will do everything I can. And then I realized the only way for me to help him would be to leave the government and go about this privately so that we can work in Haiti today and Thailand tomorrow and the United States the next day, and to not have jurisdictional kind of restrictions, and go immediately to the problem and work with law enforcement to help them. And we always work with law enforcement. We don't go around. We're not a vigilante group. Mm-hmm. And so we dug into that case. That was our first case. We met with the Haitian police, and they opened the investigation back up. They gave us the legal requirements that we needed to work under their authority. And we were able to, we haven't found the little boy yet, but we were able to find where he was, and we were able to pull 28 children out from the place he was and put a couple people behind bars who were selling kids. And so we got those kids out, and that's led to further opportunity for us to find this little boy, Gardy, where we feel we're close. And but it just shows how many Gardys are there, how many Gesno, the father, how many are. There's millions of these people, and we go about our lives, especially here in this nation. Most of us are feeling pretty protected by the laws, and we go about our lives and to think that there's millions of people who are suffering that. We need to help.
you mentioned Gardy, who's also, his story and his father's story is featured in The Abolitionists,
Yes.
the movie that you guys just released this fall, right, this summer.
Yeah.
And we actually have a clip. I was going to show it later because Gardy was actually one of the people that really humanized, for me personally, this topic. And so I pulled a clip that Emily from your team provided to me that I think I wanted to at least show to the group here. My wife and I were just across the street at the theater watching The Abolitionists, and this was the one moment that, for me, watching it, and I think, like you said, anyone who has kids or is around kids, uncle, aunt, you relate to this very, very deeply. So I'd like to show that really quickly.
Gasno is an amazing man. What he does for a living is he helps children. He runs one of the most successful orphanages in Haiti. Hundreds of kids come in and he seeks homes for them. The children there, they're happy. They love him. He's a father figure to them. In fact, ironically, the reason his son was kidnapped was because he was so successful at building an orphanage that people mistakenly believed he was a rich man.
All of us are convinced involved in Haiti, they're still there. But where?
The last time somebody thought they saw Gardy was in La Caille, right?
Yes.
So he could be there.
Yeah, it could be there, it could be in purpose too. Hidden somewhere.
So it was the nursery class that he was taken out of?
It's after the church we were taken out.
It's after church? Kids running around?
Yes. Members are seeing each other, Tennessee. I spent the whole church meeting with him on my laps, in my arms. I was teaching a lesson that day, and after the sacrament, and I just let him go to the mother. And I waited for about 5 or 10 minutes, talking to members. So when we were ready to go, my wife came back and said, "Where's Cody?" I said, "Look, he was with you." I said, "No." Then it happened. I went to the police reporting that, we've lost a child. 35 minutes later, I went to another police department. Then my phone rang. The call came anonymous, Then I hung up. Then they called me back immediately. Then I see the number. I told to the police officer, I said, "Look, there's a number that I know just called me and asking me money for the child that I've just told you that I have lost."
How much money did they ask?
150,000 American dollars they asked me first.
And what happened with that? Did you try to get the money?
Well, I give them 150 Haitian goods, which is about, at that time, 4,500 American dollars. I paid as a ransom. I paid that money on 2 occasions. They never returned the child.
And they didn't deliver.
No.
So the search for Gardy goes on for you guys.
It does. It goes on. And as you watch the film, you see we actually infiltrate the organization that was responsible for the kidnapping and trafficking of Gardy, and we end up, he's not there, but we end up liberating 28 other children who were being sold. And they're being sold for sex trafficking, for slave labor, for organ harvesting. And I know, I'm looking in the audience now, and I see the expression that I feel in my heart as well, of just broken. And you're watching this, and you're thinking, what is going on? And I apologize to all watching this, because it is so dark. And I also don't apologize, because if we don't see it, these kids won't be liberated. We have the ability, because of where we are, and who we are and the blessings we've been given, we have the ability to help. And there's millions of Guardies. That's the heartbreaking thing. This is just one story. And so it's important that we see some of this darkness so that we can rise up and really we bring light. In fact, when we rescued those 28 kids, I went back to Gesno, and it was like this bittersweet experience. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got these kids out. 3 guys are in jail now. These kids are safe, but Guardy wasn't there. He thought Guardy would be there. We were hoping Guardy would be there. And this is in the film. You remember, you see his kind of blank expression, and he's kind of shocked. And then he immediately says, well, how are those kids doing? Where are the kids, the other kids? And then off camera, they didn't get this. I said, I'm so sorry. I was in tears. I'm so sorry that he wasn't there. And he says, but you got 28 kids out. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, you know what, Tim, if I have to lose my son, so that if that's what brought you here, your team, and if I had to lose my son so that you could help get these 28 kids out, he said, that's a burden I'm willing to bear for the rest of my life. That's the kind of person this man is and his family.
Wow, an incredible man.
Yeah.
You know, I think, at least for myself, in watching that film, and I imagine maybe several of you have the same question as well, is you know, there's a feeling where you're willing and able to help, but not all of us are ex-CIA former special agents. At least I'm not. Maybe we have some others amongst our midst. But how have you seen people help in your efforts, both? You know, and specifically, I kind of wanted to talk to, given this group, how technology has helped you guys in your current mission, and how possibly, you know, Googlers could help combat this.
There's something everyone can do, you know, and you look at every great evil that's ever existed on the planet in the history of the world. It didn't go away unless people rose up. It's not enough to sit back and say, oh, someone's got it. There's people that are on this. Something this massive doesn't go away unless everyone rises up and says, what can I do? We have people who are into politics, and they pushed us to get us testifying before Congress on certain bills. There's writers and bloggers who just spread awareness about the problem. And maybe it's not us you want to support. Maybe there's other organizations out there that people support. We're great with that. Just get involved some way. But I'm especially grateful to be here today because this problem has to be attacked through high technology. There's no question about it. I've been in the middle of this fight for 15 years. These kids are being sold online. They're being sold through social media platforms. They're being sold in the dark net. That's where they're at. That's where the traffickers are operating. And I'm grateful to be here because I know the people here, you are all smarter than the traffickers. I know them. Some of them are smart. You're smarter. And we have a very aggressive program that we've partnered with the University of North Carolina, and we have an office on the campus. We worked in conjunction with private companies, with the computer science departments there at the University of North Carolina. It's called the Child Exploitation Targeting Center of Excellence, and it's where people come in and they help us, and we create tools. There's things I can't say online here, but that we're doing to combat this. But if you know kids are being sold and child pornography is being distributed online, a lot of you Googlers know, you can probably think faster than I can, how you can track them down. There's ways. And there's things that have not been created yet. There's ideas that will work that have not yet been invented. And so I would invite anyone to go through Eric, come on out to our center if you have some ideas, or we'll come to you. Let's sit down and we can talk. I mean, there's so many ideas we have, and there's things I don't know that I know Googlers know. So we can combat these guys, get these kids out. It's, you know, we can do these operations, and we will. You saw that operation on CBS News. That actually was 123 victims rescued on that operation. Cartagena was just one city. Most of our operations yield 20, 30 victims at one time. We pull them out, put half a dozen bad guys away, and we'll always do that. But this problem's not going away unless we attack it through technology. We create tools, and then we give those tools to law enforcement throughout the world. We leave, and now we've become these force multipliers. Now these guys are, with these tools, can hit a few keys and target where the kids are, target where the traffickers are and the pedophiles are, and go get them. That's how we're going to end this. So we need help in that area.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, definitely in our culture here. I was talking to you earlier about the hackathons and putting together, complex problems and sticking Googlers in front of them and seeing what comes up and what we can create. And I think that's something, definitely I can follow up with you guys on working together on that. I think that's something that a lot of people have reached out to me just in putting this topic out there and bringing you on campus have already said, how can I help? And I think that's something that we could definitely explore. One of the things you mentioned, you said that Googlers are smarter than the traffickers out there. Is there a head of the snake, so to speak, with like this organization or this ring of crime where you're going after that, or is it? Can you kind of talk to us about what those people look like?
Yeah.
You've been face to face with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we should know.
So they work in organizations, but what's interesting is they're kind of cellular in structure. Why? Because and it's not to say that a major cartel wouldn't be involved with trafficking children. That's you're going to find examples of that too. But what we have found is that selling drugs for some of these big and enormous organizations, criminal organizations, is one thing. Selling 10-year-olds is another thing. And you'll find plenty of people, even within a large cartel, who would 100% would kill to rescue a 10-year-old child, right, from being trafficked that way. So it's safer for these organizations to work in pretty small kind of cellular groups. They get too big, again, they're going to find one of their partners who's going to object. And so but they're all over the place. It's very profitable. I mean, you can sell a 10, 11-year-old girl for double or more what you would sell an adult prostitute for. And so it's very profitable. It's the fastest growing, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet. Why? Because you can sell a kilo of heroin one time, and that's it. You can sell a child 20, 30 times a day, and that's not an exaggeration, for hundreds of dollars. You could sell that child $500 per visit from a John 20 times a day. So it's much more profitable enterprise than typical trafficking contraband, and that's why it's growing so fast. And in this kind of, I think there's more sex addiction today than maybe ever before, because it's kind of a highly pornified world, and a lot of that leads people to get, some people take that and take it to the worst degree and get into child pornography. And if you saw the amount of child pornography that gets distributed just in the United States every day, you'd be shocked. We have ways to kind of track that and see that. And if there's 2 million children being forced into the commercial sex trade, you have to ask yourself, what kind of demand justifies that number? How many sick people, a lot of them from this country, are traveling and engaging in this? So that's part of the problem. It's so profitable, and there's so much demand. So these cells kind of pop up. You go to any developing country, especially anywhere in the world really, but any developing country with a resort town, and you're going to have 5 or 6 cells of 3 to 5 people who have all the kids, and they sometimes work together or work against each other, but they'll sell them to you on the beaches, on the street corners, through taxis. They have their little networks. And what we do is we're experts in going in, working with the police, and pretending to be someone interested in that market, and that's how we get inside and blow it up.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting was when you guys go in and you rescue, there's a whole other part of the story where now you've rescued a child, you've pulled them out of the situation they were in, and possibly put the trafficker behind bars. What is life like for that child moving forward where that might have been the only life they remember.
Right.
Can you kind of talk to us a
Yeah,
little
absolutely.
bit about
So
that?
there is no rescue without healing, without the back end. And as you watch the film, you see that. In our operations, we literally don't go in unless we have those rehab experts who are usually another organization who we support. I mean, we are experts at rescuing. So we have to partner with the best that we can find to do the healing part. They are on the ground with us. That arrest happens. Usually my guys end up getting arrested with the real bad guys to keep their cover. And then as everyone's being taken out, literally on the heels, in comes this rehab team. Who are you? Where are your families? Can we take you back to your families? And they work in conjunction with the law enforcement in that country. We stay involved. The U.S. embassies are just amazing, always supporting our efforts. Even when there's no U.S. Direct interest, they will do all they can to help support their colleagues in these countries. And so we rely on that. But we won't go into a country unless we find that rehab partner. In fact, there's one country, we've now done multiple operations in that country. It took us a year to green light any of their proposals to us because we couldn't find the rehab partner. And these partners that we work with, they have to be able to raise this child. Because so many, I'd say anecdotally speaking, maybe 30%, 40% of the time, there is no family to take these kids back to. In fact, sometimes the family is part of the problem. The family has been selling the child or knowing about it, thinking that this is better somehow. They're tricked, you know. And so we have to have rehab partners that, like I said, they can raise these children and then from there get them into college, get them into opportunities. And we stay with these kids. We have one little girl we've been working with for years who we just found out, you know, we asked them, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Because there's a lot of damage psychologically, obviously, that has to be undone. They've been rewired thinking they're a commodity, they're an object to be sold. And so we come in and say, well, that's not who you are. You tell us, who do you want to be? And then eventually you have these dreams of becoming she wanted to be a chef. And so we made sure that we had the scholarship waiting for her the minute she was old enough. We sent her to the top chef school that we could find. And now she's in doing her thing and being a chef, you know. And these are the kind of stories. This is the kind of thing we're trying to build on, the aftercare and the healing and finding those kind of partners. There's not enough of those. I mean, if you want to support organizations, support these rehab organizations here in the U.S. as well, who need this help. There's one in L.A. called Saving Innocence, who we work with a lot. I'd love to see them quadruple in number and groups like them.
So you say the U.S. How big of a problem is this here within the U.S. compared to the operations you see worldwide?
It's bad. I mean, it's bad here. It's not as bad. The kids, see, overseas, you stand on the right beach, and they're going to offer you 10-year-olds eventually. You're not going to see as much of that kind of blatantly here in the United States. But there are over 200,000 children who are currently forced into the commercial sex trade here in the United States. State Department estimates that over 10,000, around 8 to 10,000 children are smuggled every year into the United States, forced into the commercial sex trade. So it's definitely happening here, but it's mostly, they have to be craftier here, the bad guys, because law enforcement here is good. And so this is where we use a lot of the high-tech side to dig in and find, because they're going to sell these kids, if they're not going to sell them on a beach, they're going to sell them on places like Backpage.com. If you've heard of Backpage, we talked earlier about how the CEO of Backpage was just arrested for his involvement in pimping kids out and women out. But we've seen kids being sold on. I had a case once where a child was being sold on Craigslist, you know, unbeknownst to Craigslist, but they use codes. There's different ways that they can talk to each other. Then they pop into another platform privately and they do the deal. I've been involved in those kind of situations. So this is why we need these tools, especially for here and everywhere else, but especially here in the United States. You've got to combat it this way through technology.
Yeah. And so when you're setting up an operation with you and your team, obviously you're not going in undercover anymore.
Yeah, my undercover days are
your
gone
face
since
is
the movie.
being
Yeah.
broadcast on YouTube. But can you kind of walk us through how that's set up? Who goes in? Is there kind of a typical kind of operation plan that you guys go through?
Yeah, you know, we do. There's nothing super typical, because what we do is we get invitations from governments, locally, U.S. based, and also overseas. We've been working in 18 different countries, and that we're still active in. It's some degree of operating. From Asia to Latin America, the United States, and everywhere we can go. We cannot fill the demand. We get so many invitations. So we're trying to grow so that we can get everywhere that we're invited. So we'll sit down with the top law enforcement officer we can get a hold of, usually with the support of our embassy, which again is just a great support. And we'll sit down and say, okay, here's all the tools we have. Let's say there's, hypothetically speaking, let's say there's 12 different pieces that you would need, 12 different tactics or tools out there to rescue kids. Which ones do you guys not have? And they'll say, we have none, or we have 5, we don't have those, we don't have those other 7 or whatever. And then we have them decide, what do you want to do? What are you capable of doing? What can you do? And then we will support the rest. It's very important to us that we are not a vigilante group. We will not go rogue. We will not go outside of bounds. We work with governments, or we don't work at all. So they tell us, we would like these. Okay, well, let's set up a training. We'll come sit down with them and say, okay, here's what you need to do. And sometimes, for example, that Colombia case, what had happened there is the Colombian agents, officers said, look, there's an island, paradise, 45-minute boat ride from Cartagena. We believe we're getting reports that children are being sold on that beach for sex. But every time we try to go out there, they don't believe us, because it's mostly Westerners who go out there. So will you guys just go sit on that beach with a hidden camera and see what happens? And so we said, absolutely. So 3 of us literally just sat on the beach, ate fried fish, beautiful Caribbean, beautiful resorts, and mostly Westerners all over the place. We sit there, and it was just a matter of minutes. And this guy came up to me, called himself Fuego. And he sat down, he said, hey, what do you guys here? What do you want? And I just let him, following the rules of law enforcement and entrapment, I just said, well, I don't know, what do you sell here? And it took him a minute or two to talk about, well, one of the things on my menu for you is 11, 12-year-old girls. I said, really? You do that here? He's like, oh, yeah. Tonight? You want to go tonight? I'm like, no, but I'll come back. I'll come back. So I got his phone number, rush over to the prosecutor's office, hand over the hard drive. Here you go. Look at this guy. What do you want me to do? Okay, call him. Introduce one of us. Tell him that we're your partner here locally. And so we're leaving, but here's the guy. And then I introduced the Colombian law enforcement into the gig, so that he's in. Now he's in because they trust me and I trust him. He's in, he gets all the intel, and then we work, at that point, we work for the Colombian government. It's important that they are empowered. So then they call us up and say, okay, these guys want a party. Can you bring 15 Americans down and pretend to do a bachelor party? They're gonna bring these kids over. And what they had done was this guy on the beach introduced them to, usually they're vendors that will work for a commission. And so they introduce you to the real traffickers, the guys who have the kids. And in this case, as you saw on CBS News, these traffickers were pretending to be hosting a modeling school. And they actually used a real kind of semi-famous beauty pageant queen from Cartagena who would go into the houses and offer scholarships to 9-year-old girls and boys. Be like me, you can be famous and you shouldn't be poor, you can be, rich and come to my school. Wow. They bring them into the school and slowly desensitize them, slowly tell them, well, part of this is you're gonna go and this porn video you just watched, you're gonna go do that with this American man who's in the other room. And that's how they get them into it. They brought 54 of those victims, those kind of victims, into this party. And I had these 15 American former operators, former Navy SEALs, pretending to be boozing and ready for a party. Colombian cops everywhere pretending to be the cooks and the maids and so forth, all armed and ready. And so that's what you saw in the takedown. And the sad thing is I can say that openly because people ask, well, you just gave up the secret. There's no secret here. This is what these guys are doing every weekend. They could literally watch that CBS News clip and tomorrow bring the kids to another party because this is what they do every weekend. There's no secret tactic here. We're just doing what what all the Johns are doing. And frankly, if they do see it and think, "Ah, what if it's those OUR guys?
Yeah.
Let's not sell kids." Well, then good. That's part of the idea.
So I have another clip from the abolitionists of the takedown. It's called The Final Takedown. It's the last part in the show that I wanted to show people, that kind of puts a visual around what you just described.
Which one of you guys went with the police? Huh? Marco?
No, sir. There's nobody illegal here.
¿Qué pasa?
Silencio.
Esto es privado. ¿Quién es el jefe de ustedes? ¿Por qué partieron la puerta?
Who called the cops, man?
Well, we're glad you made it out.
Yeah.
I wanted to, like I said, open up the questioning to anyone in the group here, or I believe we have a Dory group as well. So the question was around the latest announcement about Backpage's CEO being taken down for his involvement in this, and is that more of a kind of whack-a-mole, as you mentioned, type of operation, or is that helpful in the overall scheme?
I think it's helpful because Backpage was just a nightmare. I've been on that. I've worked on that. It was just this platform where so much sexual abuse was happening because of it. So it needed to go down, absolutely. But this is just the beginning of the war, absolutely. So long as there is a demand, and there is a huge demand for children and sex, I can't comprehend it. I've been in it for 15 years. I do not understand it. What is going on in people's minds and why there's so many people. But absolutely, they'll pop up again. And they're already. I mean, they're even using real legitimate places that we don't have a beef with. Like, any platform, any social media platform, they are using to connect and to meet. And so that one was just so blatant, and they weren't even. It was just open, like, yeah, that's what we do. That's kind of our theme, is selling sex, But they will pop up. There's other sites like that are smaller, that are less known, and they will pop up and fill the demand. This is why, to combat it, we need to overwhelm these traffickers, and our numbers aren't big enough yet. And this is why we're here, to gain recruits, to figure out ways and tools to combat the other sites that are out there that are super hidden, but that are being used to rape children. That's what they're being used for. So the question was specifically about Craigslist. How is Craigslist utilized? And is there a specific example of someone who utilized Craigslist to do a deal? So my mind goes back to a case that I worked. It's already been adjudicated back when I was an agent in the government. And what had happened was my team, we would just go on any platform where things are being sold. And there's usually on most of these platforms, there's a place where men and women can meet, kind of like a dating site. But Craigslist and others have those kind of they have those venues, And so we know, and there's nothing wrong with those venues, of course. That's people meet each other, whatever. But we know that's where they go. We know through experience that pedophiles will talk to pedophiles and traffickers to pedophiles on those. But they're very careful how they do it. There's a whole language, there's symbols, there's codes that they'll use. And so we'll go in and start looking at all of them. And the ones that throw a code out there, that or a symbol or a sign that we know is being used. For a time there was, and this has been exposed now, but there was something called the pedo bear. It was this little teddy bear that they used to use to sign off with, and then they would know, aha, that this guy's really selling children. He might be talking about a car, but he's selling kids. So this person was actually, he signed off with signs like that, but he would talk about a car he had. Oh, this car's 12 years old. This car has 0 kilometers on the, it's, and so we'd be like, we know what this is all about. So we'd respond. Often they'll talk about this car and they'll put it in the place where you would meet, where men and women would meet. Like, okay, so just stuff like that. We respond, hey, I think I know what this is really about. If you think I'm onto something here, let me know. I'm going to be down in Costa Rica, and here's my private email. And then 5 minutes later, boom, we're talking, and then we're on the phone, and then we're down in Costa Rica, and he delivers this child to us. So that's kind of how they'll get around and use this. What we need to do is create tools so it's not so manual. Most law enforcement agencies, including in the United States, don't have the manpower to sit there and go through every single ad that comes through. That's very labor intensive. But there's things we can come up with. Well, how do we target keywords and signs and symbols and things like that, so that it streamlines these leads back to law enforcement, and so they're talking together. So the Costa Rican cop gets it at the same time the American cop gets it, and they're automatically connected. This is kind of the infrastructure and what I'm talking about, and with the technology that we can build the kind of tools to kind of help streamline this and prioritize cases and make it so we can more effectively pull these kids out. So the question is, how do we deal with the potential of corrupt agencies, corrupt law enforcement, or very high-profile individuals in this fight? And it's such a good question, and it's something we have to be so careful. I've mentioned several times the support we get from our U.S. embassies, and specifically, that's one of the great services that they will render. Even when it's outside of their purview jurisdictionally, we have amazing people at Homeland Security Investigations, especially that we've worked with, my former colleagues. Amazing group of people who have a heart and care, and even if there's no U.S. mandate, they will do everything in their power. And one thing they're able to help us with is they're in country. They know who they can trust, who can be trusted. Well, who do they work with? What prosecutors and law enforcement agencies and law enforcement officers have they trusted in the past to get the work of the U.S. government done? And they're usually more than happy to introduce us and say, you guys can trust that guy, and that guy. Don't work with this one or that one or the other one. And then we get a meeting, sit down, and that's when we lay out our tools. Guys, look what we can do for you. What do you want? Do you want the high-tech training? Do you want, you want us to go undercover? You tell us what you want to do. And then to date, we haven't, that we know of, had any issues, because we always use that method and to make sure that we are getting the best. And I've been pleasantly surprised that even in countries that you would think were the most corrupt, and they traditionally have historically, there's always people that truly, that we cry with, that we hug after the operation. They want these kids liberated, and it's just a matter of finding those people in every country, and they're there. And we take plenty of time. All the time we need to find them, and then we go in. Because the last thing you need is to get involved with someone who's actually on the take and can put in danger the whole operation. So, in terms of the operations on the ground, no, because nobody knows. We're very good at infiltrating. if one of our faces ever shows up on the news, it's because we're using that for an awareness campaign, and they're off. And so then we have a revolving door of undercover operators. So we're always able to operate anonymously, or operate in a way that no one would know it was us. At the same time, I would also answer yes to part of your question. I mean, and we knew this going into it, as the bigger we get, and because we are trying to tell the stories, because we truly believe that unless everyone gets involved, this isn't going to go away. And so we have to put ourselves out there. And as the face of the organization, I've done everything I can to secure my household and my family, but we know we're taking a threat. Yes, we've had threats. We've had family members of the different traffickers. I mean, we've put away with, or assisted, because we don't have arrest authority, but we've assisted in the arrest and prosecution, or and some are in various stages of prosecution, of over 280 traffickers. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people who are in jail for a long time. That's a lot of money that we took away. Dirty money. And so, yeah, we get threats. Well, we're gonna, come get you, or we're gonna, and we do everything we can to mitigate that. But it's just a risk that we all decided before we got into this that we're willing to make. Very few of us have to really come out and show our faces. I'm one of them. So it was really a decision my wife and I had to make together about, are we willing to go into this knowing that we're potentially putting our family at risk, but we also are confident in our relationships with very powerful law enforcement agencies in the U.S. and outside who work with us, who we believe, because of what we're doing, would back us and help us and defend us from those kind of threats.
Great. Well, Tim, just wanted to, on behalf of Googler and the Googlers here, wanted to just extend a big thanks for the awareness that you've brought to the group here and to those that are watching later. I know for me it was very educational, very enlightening, but also very inspirational. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone saying thank you for coming out to talk to us today.
Thank you, and I can't thank you guys enough for allowing us to come to this venue. I want to repeat what I said before. As smart as the traffickers are, you guys are smarter, and we want your help, especially on the tech side. So they have a way to get a hold of you, I'm sure.
Yeah, actually,
and I'd love nothing
when I was
more.
closing down the video, I already have 3 or 4 Googlers reach out and said, hey, I want to help.
I'd love nothing more than, and we'll come to you. I mean, bring my tech guys. I got some awesome tech guys as well, who are already been dreaming of different things we can do. And there's so many things that we're almost there. We just need a couple more pieces that you guys could fill. I know you could. It's just a matter of sitting down and can you help us with these last 3 pieces? And look what we have, this amazing new tool. And offline, I can tell you what some of these things are that are just, they're mind-blowing in this fight, and they need to be created. So let's sit down, guys. We're so excited to work with you. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Tim.